Welcome to the Sandler Training Hour. You're with Jason and Jim Stevens. And Jim, you're back. You were on a bit of a hiatus. People might have thought that you were out there having fun traveling because it seems like that's something that you love to do. And you were having an extended stay. But tell us a little bit about where you've been and maybe some takeaways from that experience.
Yeah, I went to bed Friday night with a slight headache, and by Sunday morning, I'm in the hospital, admitted with a septic blood. And one person said to me, very often when somebody said they have sepsis in their blood, they don't survive. So
Yeah.
I didn't realize how serious it was. And I looked through everything through the lens of the Sandler world in which I live. So in not only in retrospect, but in the moment, it was really interesting how, the one thing about that sets Sandler apart from most selling systems is Sandler is not about, let me tell you what you should do. It's about let's hear about what's going on and then let's work on diagnostics.
Hmm.
And the first 2 or 3 days I'm in the emergency room and I'm in the hospital is spent on exhaustive testing, serious testing to try to figure it out. And what was used in the process was 2 or 3 different specialists, each looking at their specific area of expertise and collaborating on what is the issue,
Yeah.
how did it get here, and what can we do to save this guy's life and figure out what was the door that opened this and how can we close that. And a couple of lessons learned there was it was great to have uh, I mean, how fortunate are we to live in a time where science has advanced to the point where they are able to use the equipment. In fact, one of our clients is sells and maintains imaging equipment, and I was in all of their equipment multiple times. So, living in a time where this is available, that in itself is mind blowing.
Yeah.
But beyond that, it just reminded me of team selling because you've got 3 or 4 specialists that are each they're trying to pinpoint the problem, and it really there was a gap between collaboration and proxim prox what's the word I want?
Proximity?
Proximity. I think if they could have all gotten in a room and just had a dialogue,
Yeah.
it probably would have sped things up and gotten to a resolution sooner. Uh, Individually, I had an endoscopy, and in that process, they wheel me into this room, and there's 5 or 6 technicians, and there's the physician, and their upfront contract I thought was awesome. They said, whoever's running the room said, okay, here's the patient name, verify that. Here's what we're here to do, verify that. Here's and they went through their checklist. Does anybody see anything we've missed? Or is there anything I haven't brought up that needs to pay attention? I mean, it was a very clear example of team selling at its
Yeah.
best. And I think very often in a sales role, most all of us, we don't sell in a vacuum. There are other people involved in the sales process. And I often say selling is theater, and the theater of having that endoscopy and their upfront contract gave me a very high level of confidence, and the collaboration that could and should and ultimately did, but it's happening over text with the various specialists. I think there's a level of friction there. And what I walked away from that whole experience, or one of the things I walked away was just the importance for us as uh, sales and business development professionals to make sure we have our full team collaborating, that we've got all of the resources on the same page and we're working together to diagnose before we give any kind of uh, solution or response. So grateful to be alive, grateful for the staff that helped and supported, and they're still working on really isolating what was the issue and how do we close the back door that let it happen. But what a blessing to live in our culture with our resources.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love stressing like the importance of diagnostics. Um, Especially through that the other thing that like caught my mind when you're telling your story is that even in a performance or in a realm where of theater, like
Yeah,
the surgery theater, like the role comes with competence that's granted by assuming the role. Your competence isn't because of who you are, it's because you have earned the right to that role. And so, like a lot of times as sales professionals, we take for granted that we are what we do. And then we let what we do impact how we see ourselves, which leads to sales being a painful experience.
yeah,
No one wants to be perpetually in pain, but if you conflate what you do with who you are, that's the natural outcome because 100% of the time is not a guarantee that you can have for success in sales.
yeah,
And just to that point of like, is everyone here that needs to be here? Are you in the right room?
yeah,
This question and the diagnostic, like there is a reason why it's easy for doctors to start with the question, how are you feeling? What's going on? Tell me about the symptoms that you're experiencing. Because they're not trying to discover what the symptoms that you're experiencing are. They just know that they can't make assumptions about your experience.
yeah, yeah,
Like look, you're grabbing your head. It looks like your head hurts.
yeah,
Like that's not going to tell them too much. So they need because they don't live in your shoes. They don't wear your skin.
yeah,
And I think that's the risk of being in sales is that you're actually enabled to make assumptions. Like you can do this. You can think, oh, I know what you're going through. In fact, I helped someone last week with this same issue.
yeah.
Do you want to hear about how I helped them? But the issue that they had last week and the issue that the person in front of you has, there's a world between what the experience of those issues is.
Yes.
And urgency is through experience. Someone who's got oh, what would you say? Like stepped on a nail. Guess what their urgency is about? First about removing the nail, second about getting a tetanus shot.
Yeah, yeah,
Someone who like stepped not far enough to penetrate their foot, but opened their shoe. Well, if it rains, they might have urgency to get new shoes.
right. And it's not until on the reality of the importance of diagnostics. I think the biggest disservice we provide first to ourselves, second to our team, and third to our client is assumptions.
Yeah.
Even though you've been doing this your whole career and you've heard the exact same story from somebody different just last week, that doesn't mean the person in front of you has the same issue.
Yeah.
So get making it an essential ingredient of every sales interview to come in with high level of curiosity and no assumptions. The only thought I want to have going into a sales call is the skepticism that think I know what I know. I want to be skeptical about what I think, and I want to be skeptical about how they answer. One of my specialists said, "So, how often do you have headaches?" And my response was, "Well, I don't think I get headaches." And the next meeting that I had with her, she said, "Yeah, when you said that yesterday, I knew that you are unaware and the reality is I've had headaches for the past year,
Yeah.
and I've gotten so used to it, I don't recognize it."
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Well, we'll close with this thought, which is that in the world, there is this thing called the dictionary of misunderstood words. The example is Jim saying the word headache to him meant something dramatic like a migraine,
Yeah.
whereas to the doctor, a headache meant an ache in your head.
Yeah.
The gap is definitional. When we hear a word, if we don't question what does that word mean to you, then we play into the territory of this book dictionary of misunderstood words, where that's where confusion in relationships come from. Like, why is it hard for people to say love? Well, there's baggage. What is that baggage? The question of what is that baggage is the important question to ask, not how do you define the term? Because if you ask someone to define a term and within that definition is the word itself, which is that is a non-useful definition. It would be
Yeah.
like, well, love is love. Great, but not useful. What is love to you?
Yeah.
And that's an abstract version of this, but in sales, we run into this all the time. Because you use the word investment, they're thinking of how much money do they want to spend of mine? We're talking about wallets differently. I need to know how much money you're willing to invest because I don't want to give you a presentation on something that is outside of the scope, nor do I want to offer you a solution that you can't access. That's not fun for you. And it may meet a need for me, but it's certainly not fun for me because we want to figure out a way where we can work together and everyone incrementally buys.
Yeah.
But that's us with
Love
Sandler
that.
training.
I love that dictionary of misunderstood words because I think if you're in sales, you fall prey to that and are
Mhm.
guilty of assuming what you think a headache means is what they think it means and getting granular to really figure out what is it. That's where people feel heard and they're looking for a trusted advisor that will help solve their problem. I walked away from my engagement with this whole episode in my life feeling hopeful because I've
Mm.
had 6 or 7 years of sinus issues that have been unresolved, and now it's culminating into a focus on let's figure out what it is and let's solve that problem. That is so hopeful. It's painful to get there, but just the thought of ultimately being there,
Yeah.
that's the gift you, as a business development professional, can offer the buyer if you take time to really listen and understand.
Yeah. Listen to understand, not to be understood, not to share your piece. But that's
Love,
us with Sandler training. If
love it.
you have questions or concerns, reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. But otherwise, thanks for listening. Share if you feel like it, and good luck out there.